Welcome back, everybody. If you're just joining us for the first time, please stop and go back to class 1. I hope that you had time to gather your supplies and at least try to make some rings, or 2 or 3. Today's class will teach you how to reverse your work, make a chain, how to read a pattern, ending and adding thread, and working with different colors. In order to make chains, there has to be an additional thread. You can have a ball added, or you can have another shuttle. Pay attention to the pattern instructions. Most times it will either not say anything at all, it will say you can use either, but sometimes it'll have to be 2 shuttles. The advantage of using a ball is that you don't have to reload or add thread to it. But a disadvantage is it can be that the ball's too big to go through a picot, for example. Chains are made the same way as a ring, with the difference being that when you grasp the thread from the ball or the second shuttle, it will not make a ring. So if you let go of it, it will just open up, which is fine. You can drop it as many times as you like. It doesn't do anything, but it will never make a ring. The other thing is that you need to reverse your work, which means you hold the ring upside down, unless it otherwise says. When starting the first chain, it's kind of awkward. That happens in knitting and a lot of other things too. One of the easiest ways to go from a ring to a chain is to not cut your thread. When you wrap for your shuttle, leave it attached. Don't cut it off. That will make it easier. I'll show you with a ring that I have already made. I'll just put the ball thread here. And here is a ring that has already been made. Now I've buried my thread that used to come off here, and I will show you how to do that. There are other methods of attaching, and I will show you that as well later. But first, I want to show you how to hold the thread for your chain. So remember, the shuttle is for rings, and the ball, or the second shuttle, is for making chains. When I say reverse your work, this is how it is when you make your ring. You're going to flip it upside down, and that makes the ball or the second shuttle thread in the right position to make a chain, which is going to exist right about here. You can do it one of a couple of ways. Usually the way I see it recommended is to wrap your thread just like you do when you're making a ring, but wrap it around your finger several times and then close your finger. This is your working area, and you will make your chain in that section. This is not the most comfortable for me. I don't know why. I guess maybe, again, it's just not the way I learned to do it at first. But however it makes it for you, the important part is when you make your first double stitch, you still have to reverse the knot. It has to be on your shuttle thread. You pull it down, and you want it right next to the bottom of your ring. You complete the double stitch, reversing your work, and there is 1 double stitch on there. I'm going to go ahead, and the pattern is in your outline. It's 4 double stitches, so that's 2. Let me make 3, 4. Now I want to be closer. If you can wiggle your fingers up, because I'm going to make a picot. I'm going to show you the other way that I do it. Again, it doesn't really matter. You're doing the same thing. I go ahead and wrap it around just like I was making a ring. It's just that because I'm using the ball thread, it won't form a ring. But I'm going to do, there's already 1 done with the picot. So that will be 2, 3, 4. Now it doesn't look like much. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do the picot. Here's a good example of how to pick out your work. So you basically either using your crochet hook, you can use a tapestry needle, but basically you're undoing everything that you did. See, you follow the thread back, so it came through this. Take that out, that's one. Oops. It's easiest if you pick the top of the lark's head or the bar of the double stitch. With big thread, this is number 3 so that you could see it well. It's super easy. Let's see, I need 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna pick out one more. It gets a little bit more challenging when your thread is little. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It's definitely still possible. It might be easier to use a tapestry needle, a small tapestry needle, to undo it than the hook on your crochet hook. All right, so let me try that again using my method, which I will make sure my threads are straight. You want your chain thread to be up on top. I hold it like this. I will make my picot, which I forgot to do. And that counts as the first double stitch. I'll pull it down. And you'll notice when I let go, it falls off, but it doesn't matter. So there's one. Oops. Let's do that again. Remember I told you you'll drop your shuttle a lot? It happens. So there is 2, 3, and 4. And it looks just like I'm making a ring. I'm holding the thread, but when I drop it, because I'm using the ball thread, it doesn't form a ring. It also doesn't look too great right now. That's because I need to pull and tighten my stitches. And there you see, it ends up arching. Now, when you have the chain on the top, you're making chains. I have to reverse my work because that means I want to make a ring. So I will bore you for just a moment and make another ring so that I can show you another chain. When you make your first ring stitch, double stitch right up snug to the chain so that you don't have any thread. Now this time you'll notice when I let go, it is a ring, and that's because I'm using the shuttle thread. So that's, whoops, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm joining a picot. Same way, I'm gonna make myself a little more room. Same way as when you were doing ring, 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 ring. The chain doesn't change that. It just forms a different look on the bottom. Instead of it just being a plain string, you have your chain. Now again, you wiggle it down until it's down at the base. And because it's a picot, it does not count as a double stitch, so I need 4 more. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. I need more room. I'm going to make a picot. And the first stitch of the double stitch in the picot counts as 1, so that's 2, 3, and 4. And we're going to make one more picot. And I'm also going to drop my shuttle. There we go. So I've made 1. This is 2, 3, and 4. And that will form a ring. So I will pull that closed. Make sure it's tight at the bottom so that you see that there's no gaps in between the chain and the ring. I want to make the chain, so I'm going to reverse the work so that what I'm working on is at the top. I'm also going to use the ball thread or the second shuttle. I'm going to use my method. Just hold it, pinch it like you were doing a ring. When you do a chain, you don't need as much thread, so you will find yourself doing this to get it closer because you don't need the same amount. Oops, I did it once too many. Again, when you make your first double stitch, bring it all the way to the edge and finish it. That locks it up tight. Again, if I drop it, it's not a ring, but it's okay. So I'm going to do 4 double stitches. Whoops. There we go. 4 double stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to scoot my fingers up. If you have to drop the thread to do it, don't worry about that. Just do that. I'm going to make a picot. Oops. Not holding it very tightly. I'm going to make, oops, the second stitch and slide it down. There we go. I'm going to tighten it up because I didn't make it very tight there. And then I'm going to do the first double stitch is already done in the picot. So I'm going to make 3 more. So that's 1, 2, oops. That's how I do it. 2 and 3. All right. Now, again, it doesn't look like much. Tighten it up, and it pulls it into a very nice arch. I would flip it using my shuttle thread to create the ring. And you'll notice the ball thread's down at the bottom when I'm doing that. When I'm making the chain, the ball thread should be at the top. Now, that thread was connected. So there are different ways that you can add thread when you are having to add thread because you've either run out, or say you had a wound bobbin and you're just adding a different color, then you have to add it. So the easiest way is to take your other thread that you're going to add, the ball thread, make it go in the same direction as if I'm making a ring in this particular case, and put a little dab of sewing glue right there. Let it sit for a second. It will hold it. That requires patience, which I don't have, so that would not be the way I would do it. If you were adding, another way to add it, another way to add it is to use your shuttle, which I don't have a shuttle attached to this, but that's okay. When I make my first double stitch, which would look like this, oops, no, it wouldn't. I should have one with a shuttle. I'll show you another one with a shuttle in a second. We'll just make it a knot and pretend it's a shuttle. The trick is that you have to get the thread over both of your threads. And then when you pull the stitch tight, it'll hold both of your threads together. And you have to do that, I would say maybe 3 times with this particular weight, maybe just twice when you're using a smaller weight thread. If you're using a smaller weight thread, and you can probably do it fine on the bigger threads too, but I think it shows more than I like. The other way to do it is to just tie a knot. Just like you would a regular, I just use an overhand knot, and I pull it tight, and then usually have to do through the loops 3 times for it not to slide. There are weaver's knots. People do that. I don't know. I always have to look up the directions for a weaver's knot, and this is just good. It works fine. It doesn't need to be a weaver's knot, I don't think, unless you're making a bedspread or something that's going to be rough. So there you have it. There's a small knot there. It'll slide because I only made the 2 knots. If you make the 3rd knot, it won't slide. But you want it snug up against the bottom. I'll show it to you as soon as I can flip it over. There you go. And when it's small thread, it just doesn't show. Oops, there we go. And then you go ahead and continue doing what you were doing. The way that I do it, I think it's the easiest. Well, I'm sorry, there's one other way, but I'll show you here. This is a floss threader for people who have to guide their floss in between two crowns. It really has a much longer tail. I cut it because that's too long. Because the other way you can add thread is to lay this along, and this one I can show you. So I'm ready to make a chain. I need to add thread to this. You just lay this down along with the ball thread, wherever that is. And then when you make your stitch, it is a little bit easier. I'm just gonna do it with the shuttle, and I need to keep it in focus, right? When you go through and you bring it up, it's a little easier because this is straight to force it into the circle that you're making, which I did not make one because I've got a needle attached. But the point is that you can, let me see. When you make your knot, let me make a double stitch, keeping both of your threads. I'll just make it go where it's supposed to go. And then when you bring the double stitch up, get all your loose threads out of the way. And just make sure that the tip of this goes into the double stitch needle, or the double stitch loop, and then pull it closed, and that will guide it and keep it on there. Then you can stick your thread once you've had 3 or 4 of them done. This again is not my favorite way, which is why I'm not really showing you. But you would stick your thread through this just like you would a needle threader and pull it through, and it'll pull it through the few threads or the few double stitches that you did. So now I'm going to show you the way I like to do it. And I do that a little bit better than the way I've been showing you. I take and thread the ball thread onto a tapestry needle. And wherever I am on, whether I'm on a chain or a ring, I insert it at the bottom. Let's see. I think you can see that in the bottom loop. So underneath the bar of the lark's head double stitch, and then I pull it through, and then I literally just take the needle off. That's enough to hold it. It won't come undone while I'm trying to work. So because I'm making a chain, I'm just going to ignore these pieces. These are going to get buried. The chain will get buried in here thread, and this thread will get buried up a couple of loops. And you do it the same way. You go into, let me get the needle. I would thread this thread. I would go right into one of the loops. Oops. Not that. This one right here. It's a little awkward because I'm looking at it at an angle, but I would go into one of the stitches, take it down, bring it up, and then just cut it off. That's enough to hold it. And then the same with the chain after I make the chain. But because it's attached, I wanted to show you another chain so that you'll have a couple to look at. So I have to reverse my work. So my rings are at the bottom, the chain is at the top. The ball thread is the thread that I'm using to make my loop. I'm using, let me just let that twirl. I'm using the shuttle. And yes, I see that knot there. It's okay because I'm just stemming. I would take that knot out if I was making something. So again, I'm holding it, even though it's not really a ring, I'm holding it just like I used to for the ring. Make sure you bring that knot all the way down so that it's snug up against the ring and or the other chain. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I would make, I'm going to shift my fingers up and make a picot. If you find like you think you're doing it right, you're reversing your knot, and you still somehow get an occasional knot, let me tell you that sometimes it's, so I reversed it correctly. If I'm making a picot, for example, I've reversed it correctly, but in the process of making my next stitch, it reversed, and that will make a knot. So just be aware that when you're making double stitches, they can flip back even though you don't want them to. So if you find that you're knotting and you think you're doing it right, you might check your progress as you're making them. That's 2. And that might be your problem. See, 3. Okay, 4. So that's my chain. Again, it doesn't look pretty until I pull it, and then it arches. My next ring would go here. And personally, I would probably at this point stop and bury. First of all, I would cut both of these after I leave them long so that you have enough where you can thread in and out with your needle. And then I would just cut them off very close to the base there. All right, now we did that. So you finish your thread the same way. So you make your last stitch, you clip it with, at least this much, because if you're using this method, you want to be able to thread it and have the length of your needle be allowed to go in. And like I said, I would just go in one of the knots, and you have to do them one at a time. Let me see if I can thread this while I'm having you guys watch. It'll be interesting. I'll try see if I can be successful doing this at an angle. Yep. Stick that in there. It's kind of like when you're using the threader, you're trying to get it inside. All right, so you want it long enough so that you can pull your needle out, but you would go in the top of one, pull it, try to make sure that you're laying it flat when you do it. And again, with thicker thread, I would probably do 2 or 3. Thinner thread, it depends on how tight your chain is. That's enough to hold it. So I would take maybe three different ins and outs, and then just being careful not to cut your other thread. Snip it close, you snug it up, it disappears. And then I would do the same for this so that it's not hanging around and getting caught up in my other threads. Now, I don't know if you noticed, let's see, this is not that. When you use 2 colors, you can get a variegated and solid pattern by adding the variegated threads. So you have variegated here, and the chains are a solid color. And you can reverse that to make the loops the solid color and the outside chains variegated. The directions for reading directions, if you get out your outline that you can download and go to different types of directions, this is the way I learned. This is the way Tatsy writes their patterns. Ring, there'll be at the beginning of the pattern, it will say R means ring. SR is a small ring. It'll have it all defined, but it'll say ring 4 double stitches, a picot, 4 double stitches, a picot, 4 double stitches, a picot, 4 double stitches. And that is the pattern for the ring that we made. And then we're making another ring because remember on our lace that we were making, it was just rings. So again, another ring, 4 double stitches. This time there's a plus. That means you need to add it to the last picot of the ring before. Then 4 double stitches, picot, 4 double stitches, picot, 4 double stitches. It'll repeat if you're in lace, it wouldn't say how many times because you can make it as long as you want. If you're making something that goes around in a circle with chains, it'll tell you how many times it wants you to repeat this pattern. There are patterns with extended explanations. This is much less common. It actually spells it out. Ring of 4 double stitches, picot, 4 double stitches, etc. So it's the same pattern as this, but it's all spelled out. If you're using German books or books written in Scandinavian language or Dutch, if it's written this way, it's going to be harder. You can use Google Translator, and that might make it good enough so that you can understand it. These, you don't really need translators, so there's lots of patterns. And nowadays, and I say that not because I'm ancient, but when I started tatting, this was the way you saw it everywhere. But nowadays, they have picture patterns, and that's good for a visual learner. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. This pattern, oops, is this. So it was a ring, and it tells me to reverse the picture. The pattern says to reverse. So when I reversed it, there are no chains in this one. It's another ring, but there's a certain length, which of course you want to make consistent. Ring, reverse it, ring, reverse it, ring. And it tells you in the instructions, I'm going to pull it up closer so you can see it. There's always a start here. It may not say start here, but there'll be an arrow. So I'm starting at the base of this ring right here. So I do my 4 double stitches, my picot, my 4 double stitches, picot, 4 double stitches, picot, 4 double stitches. Then I'm going down here. See, it says A, B, C. So I didn't go this way. I came down this way. And again, it has the pattern of 4 double stitches with a picot. And there aren't any joins there until you get back up to here, which you flip your work again and do C and repeat and follow as such. I will show you a pattern that has, this was the original, it's nasty looking, but this is the original snowflake that I made so many of. It did say pearl cotton number 3. We used 12 because we didn't have pearl cotton number 3 available to us back then. Again, this was over 40 years ago. But you'll see it says make ring 2, then a picot, 2, picot, P, and it goes on. Then it says close ring, reverse work, and then you make the other. And this is a chain. Instead of an R over here, it's a chain 2, picot, etc. Reverse work. Then it has the join in this particular. So this is kind of a hybrid of some of the writing. That was the original pattern I made. Now, fixing mistakes is always so much fun. I'm kidding, of course, if you haven't figured that out. The best way to fix something, or not the best, but the easiest way generally, is to use either your crochet hook or a tapestry needle and put it, let me go this way, so I have the bar up there. You see the 2 stitches, if you remember my big fat stitch anatomy, I take the bar right there and loosen it, and that'll bring it out. And then again, I put that in here and pick it out. Picking it out is the very best way to do it. If you're using very tiny thread, Sometimes picking it out is difficult, and depending on where you made the mistake, it may be very tight by that time because you're constantly pulling and pulling. So generally I advise you to plan, like if you're running out of thread, plan ahead. The easiest one to do is the chain. And I just clip it and that falls right off. And then I still have lots of this thread. I can pull the rest of the thread out. Remember, you don't need to have the attaching thread be that long. Let's see if I can, it's kind of flipping around here. Oops. I want to show you that after you pull it out, you have enough thread to lay it down or to weave it in, so you're not too close to where you're adding your thread. And then I'm going to cut the ring for you, because you can also do it on a ring if you need to. If that's where your problem is and you can't get it corrected by unpicking, then sometimes you have to cut a ring. Anyway, this will come off and you end up with two pieces of your thread, just like it before you added it. If you need to cut in a ring, this is the bottom of the ring. I would cut, depending on the size of it, I would probably go for cutting in the middle. Try to cut a picot. It's not absolutely necessary that it be a picot. I'm going to just slide that off. And sometimes you have to just go ahead and clip the thread. Again, I would do it about halfway through because I know my thread is going to be about this long. Some of it will just come off like this, and the rest you have to pick, but then you have your thread that you can lay down the other thread with and add, just like you were doing, not because of a mistake, but because you needed more thread. So that's how you fix your mistakes. And I usually try to pick it out for, I don't know, 2 minutes. If it's not coming apart, I cut it off. It's the easiest way to not get frustrated. And you need to know how to add and get rid of thread anyway. So that works out good. So we covered directions, the different kinds. And let's see, we did our mistakes, so we're pretty much done. I'm excited to be able to set up some Zoom meetings with you. And that would be for people who are having an actual issue, not to chit-chat about tatting, although it will depend on how many people I need to help. I'd like to have no more than 10 people on a Zoom call. We'll figure out a mechanism for you to sign up, and we'll post the information along with your resources. I wanted to show you some of the resources I put in the resource page. Let me pull them over here. This book is the complete, no, I have to turn off this light because it's shiny. Hang on. Because you can see a reflection. That makes it hard to see. The Complete Book of Tatting by Rebecca Jones. All of this is in your resource page. This book is, well, as it says, everything you wanted to know but couldn't find out about shuttle lace. It's a great book. If you're not super interested in tatting, this is probably too much for you. There are some patterns, not a lot. It does show you all kinds of things that you can make and how to make letters, for example. There are bookmarks. It does show you how to attach it to a hanky, and those kinds of things. It's an extensive book. It's not a pattern book, although there are some patterns in there. But it's a good book if you're really deciding that you like to make lace. A more simple one is Learn to Tat. This is an Annie's book. Again, I've put it all in the resource. Comes with a CD. Starts you off very simple, how to make a ring, which is kind of what we did. How to reverse your work and still be just making rings. Then it'll teach you how to make chains. And then there's some tatting projects in here. So this might be a good one if you're sort of interested, want to try a little bit more, want to be able to watch a CD that does all of that. This is an example. If you go to Handy Hands, and I do have permission to show this, from them, I received permission, as long as I gave them the credit. Go to their website, which is actually hhtatting.com. They have lots of free patterns. Their patterns are outstanding. They give you colors. Purple's the center, then it's blue, and then it's green. Gives you this. It also tells you, which I like a lot, that if you use a size 3, this will become 5.5 inches across. If you use a size 20, it'll be 2.75. It does have the numbers, just as I said. You can see it. It may look confusing, but just think about it. Read the directions. It's making a 1 picot, well, 1 double stitch, a picot, 2 double stitches, a picot, 2 double stitches, a picot, 2 double stitches, all the way around. Then it tells you to tie, hide, and cut. Now you're doing your second level. And again, it's got an arrow. It tells you where to start. It says to do 8 double stitches, a picot, 2 double stitches, a picot, 2 double stitches, a picot, and then 8. Then you're going to do your chain. It's 9, a picot, and 9. You're going to do the circle again, and then the chain, and then the circle again. And you just continue that all the way around. Third round starts here. Again, the instructions are down here, but it also clearly says you make 3 double stitches, a picot, 8 double stitches, a picot, and that's how you follow a pattern. It does also have a nifty thing, a red triangle, which indicates several joins. So you're actually, when you get to this point, you're joining this ring, this ring, this ring, and this chain. Ring of Tatters is a group of tatting. It's an organization in the UK. I think it's $35 American to join. They give you 4 different newsletters, they call them, but they're very nicely made patterns. They do, there's usually, you know, here's a competition. There's some old patterns people have found. Some of the members' work. They, you know, they made a little hook holder by tatting, which is kind of clever. Lots of different patterns. They'll have stories about, even in the olden days, about tatting and what people did with them, comments from members, etc. So I did join. When you join, you get a little pin, and it's R, small o, a large T. So Ring of Tatters. Then sending you back to Helping Hands again, or Handy Hands. This is why I keep saying Helping Hands, because their newsletter is called that, but Handy Hands has it. It's $6 a year, I think. And it's kind of interesting. Again, it's a little bit of history. You always get at least one, and I actually, no, this is not the same one. It's close though. Doesn't have the center ring. Here's another tatted doily or medallion. They always have a crocheted one as well. So if you do both, then you'll have that. Then they usually highlight an old book that's out of publication and out of copyright. And you can tell it's old because it's brown. But they have some very interesting articles, you know, all kinds of lace, some amazing projects. People made bedspreads with tatting. I just can't even envision. But anyway, I think that's $6 and you get them, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a year. And the last one I'm going to show you is Beginning Tatting. It's still in print. You can get it on Amazon and eBay, I think is where I found them all. But it has some nice projects. The cover on the top of a Christmas ball. This is not the one I made, but very similar wreath. Some doilies. This is in fact the bookmark that I made. Some little booties, and then all kinds of lace edgings that you can put on towels that are very simple but really dress them up and make them look very pretty. Shows you how to make cuffs, and then in the back, all kinds of edging if you're interested in that. Well, that's the end of the program, other than the Zoom calls. I hope that you've successfully made it all the way through and can make the rings, and you've just learned how to make chains. There are all kinds of other kinds of tatting out there. Adding beads is probably the most popular one. I think pearl tatting is similar, but it still involves something different. And I've never done it, so I can't really say. Roll tatting is easy. I kind of showed that in the second class when you were actually making a mistake and it was twirling. That can be a really nice design feature. And then the double stitch, then the Clooney tatting, which I showed you briefly a loom in the first class. The complete book of tatting shows you how to do that without a loom. I'm not sure that it makes it easier. I've only ever had the experience of doing Clooney tatting with a loom. Go ahead, keep trying. Let me know if I can help you. And then look forward to some Zoom meetings that we can attach to each other and see if we can figure out what's going on. Thanks so much for the opportunity to pass on my love of tatting. I hope you really enjoyed it. Bye.